Music is one of the most important things in life that gives it a proper spice. Without it, things would kind of lose meaning and become boring husks without a greater purpose, where such a thing has become a staple of Disney for the last century where they cannot live without it. I mean, yes, they can go without songs in many of their films, but to be honest with you, that's what really makes their movies stand out amongst the rest. And in speaking of Disney songs, only one remains to be the most recognizable in the modern public eye besides When You Wish Upon a Star. One that started about 10 years ago when a film named Frozen was released and changed the world from that point forward with the song everyone knows as Let It Go. Because honestly, that indeed is the first thing you think of when you put up Disney songs due to its massive popularity brought after the film's release back in 2013, sparking the Frozen fever we saw in 2014 and 2015, where every single person in the world that you knew who saw or just heard of the movie was hypnotized into singing it and hearing it every single day of the holiday season, making covers, hearing it in multiple languages, whatever and whichever you can find that made it relevant, where it's the only major Disney song that I've heard to be played on the radio alongside the other pop hits that were released at the time. I mean, there might have been several over the years, where the closest I could think of at this point would probably be We Don't Talk About Bruno, but that still just doesn't come close to the sheer power that this one song had over the population that nobody was able to let go of, ironically. Where in this video, I just wanted to talk about it being the overrated masterpiece that it is, trying to find the reason why this song resonated as such. Now, this doesn't mean I think it's overrated in the way most do nowadays, where it is annoying to extent and it probably is a bad song. I actually do find it overrated as a song compared to many better Disney songs, but just how it generally is a good song that somehow really captivated the entire world for some reason. Like, its place as a phenomenon is really astounding and a testament to what can connect us as humans in terms of music that we all love. All done through the use of a character that was originally designed as a villain, as most of you know why I actually deemed her as a bad character on that side, and the fact of what they did to her character after her popularity exploded. Because I still don't hate her as a character, I did have a fictional crush on her too, and think they could have done more for her parents in that regard as the reason why I hate them and the major issues that do make Frozen stand out as an annoying overrated piece of media from beginning to end. But for this, just do feel like they had a good message with Elsa and let it go when the way they finally developed her. Because when you think about it in Frozen in terms of its positives, the story has Elsa and Anna separated from each other for the most part of their lives, the conceal don't feel nature of Elsa's powers fearing control of them and what the public would think, just like what happened during her mistake with Anna that could potentially cost her life if done again. Everything in this part of the film is pictured as more static, more perfect for the public's presentation that is in that typical Rico fashion right before it hits where Anna and Elsa finally interact with each other again in the first time in forever. And then we go through the major change in the film when both of our characters both break because of what was built up in the isolation that their parents had put on them, causing Elsa to reveal her powers and run away in fear because of that nightmare that had potentially come true out of protection. And this is where Let It Go comes into play in terms of how Elsa ended up right here as we have seen both from before and what happens after when she sings the very song. Because during development of the song, she was still going to be a villain at that very time, and you kind of see that fitting as she doesn't actually think about the consequences she caused as she rushed away from everyone out of fear of what they might do for her, where it has the song Free Yourself from such to really be who she truly is, where they really wanted to use the song as a better way to understand her as a character from that picture when she was with society, where such emotion performed in the song meant that she was instead going to be a more complex overall good character who was misunderstood through the abuse of loving but not very smart parents. Like, from its very inception, this particular song was just going to change the game for the entire movie and anything involved with it because of what it was going to portray. Now, I'm not like a music nerd or anything of that type and more of a standard movie enjoyer of such works in the movies and music of what I like, but the way the song is portrayed and written and how it plays out just feels very familiar to how pop music is heard, where you just know how it feels like a hit while still staying within the same familiar Disney style of the musicals of the past, especially that of the Renaissance in the new 3D revival era that started with Tangled. Because the first part of the song is her learning to let go of how people feel about her, away from what she had been told her whole life to do with such expectations that many people relate to being bottled up inside to what others around us are actually thinking. Simply learning to let go as what has been concealed has already been revealed, albeit still away from society at this part of course. and it's just more about that build-up of where she shows emotion of fear and sadness from what she just witnessed to finally revealing and reveling in her own powers that she had been given, making her happier to free that part of herself, something that she needed in order to control that we see her finally feel comfortable where she can actually create what she wants to create without fear of hurting anyone in particular at that very moment. Where, to be honest with you, the visuals do help in this scene, especially as the song grows alongside it, with Elsa being more comfortable with herself, especially that castle that took 50 animators and 30 hours just to render one frame because of how important it was. It is the important representation of what Let It Go really is that gives it a nice shine to what they said was designed to illustrate the maturing of her powers as well as to be a manifestation of her feelings to the world, where regardless of what I or anyone else thinks about Elsa as a character that we know today, we can all still appreciate this and connect to that very moment to feel what we want to feel, to grow as humans and to become more powerful from where we first started, which in fact is the most relatable position to actually be in, and because of that, it can be up for any interpretation to what it relates to how some people react to the words in a negative or positive light, depending on who they are and what they believe in. And it's all done through the simple repetition of Let It Go itself that carries that meaning each time it's sung, where its simplicity somehow carries the complexity, if you get what I mean. The reason why it's stuck in most of our heads because of that line and because of the meaning that just works regardless, compared to say something that doesn't work like a villain in This Is the Thanks I Get, because of the fact you learn nothing about the character due to its shallow development, compared to say here in Frozen with Let It Go and Elsa, you saw such experiences that allowed her to develop to this point in the film, and it just makes sense to why she sings something this certain way to actually emphasize the point of letting something go. And basing that pattern again on the snowflakes that form the foundations and the overall tone of the castle and her powers are a true effective way to sell the song to be much stronger in its overall output, because looking at Let It Go, you really have to see it as much as you do hear it to understand its popularity and why that feeling connected with so many people, where without it, it just becomes an annoying overrated piece that we all know it for. I mean, the lyrics can still apply the same way if you don't see the actual video or film in that case, but you still lack that specific meaning for what it is supposed to show to bring as much as any other Disney song, which is an integral part of the movie process, a piece of the puzzle that makes it to what it is. And that was something that was heavily promoted in every other language too, dubbed in a total of 44 at this point in time, where they put a lot of effort into finding people who could match Idina Menzel's vocal tone so that they could get the song to connect just as well as the original, seen here in the official video showcasing all the voices bringing it to life, where it brings the same impact all around to those distinct cultures and nations that makes it universally the same tones, the same song, whatever you could find that commits to that same relatable feeling that you hear and want to relate to. It is that effort alone that also contributed to the popularity of Let It Go that makes everyone's head spin based upon that very same effort, topping the charts in places like Korea and Japan, where the movie experienced such huge popularity similar to the success of it here domestically. Because the song really is about being open to yourself, and every human can actually see that regardless of nationality or other barriers that separate us and makes us unique, where you can see that same continuing theme throughout the entire film with each of the earlier songs with First Time and Forever and Love Is an Open Door, speaking about those specific open doors and more revealing to what was buried inside, where Let It Go really signifies the massive change that the story is about to take due to how others see each other, especially in the relationship Anna and Elsa have that they want to fix, how the attitude adjustment of each character goes in separate directions, and because of that we are able to see and pick a part of it in a separate distinct way than other Disney stories before or after it, if you get that point. It's just an unexplainable quality to it that you know exists inside, but you can't quite describe it to why it's that popular. Where you see in the course of the film, Anna now sees that very point because of what she had and is willing to do anything to help to continue that very growth and path, but for this time for everyone else to see that point, with how the ending of the film played out between the two sisters. It's about changing for the better in that regard, with the code never bothering her anyway, just being yourself to the best you could be. In of course such a relatively easy to digest simple way that makes everyone enjoy it, especially kids of that type of that time growing up because they know the character so well, and more specifically how it is easier for them to connect with a song that repeats its lyrics every single time, like Let It Go, 3 simple words that they can actually speak, where you can now see why it made so much more sense in terms of that overblown popularity. but also to the point where such popularity has also damaged the goodwill the song had because everyone has heard it, losing such meaning because of how in the face it actually gets. And that is something that is a sad byproduct of what happens when something gets to a certain level of popularity that you want nothing to do with it, regardless if something is good or not. Your feelings to it gets negative because you've already heard it again and again, mentioning how all of us are still unique individuals with different tastes and cannot stand when something is liked by a larger group, wanting to specifically separate ourselves from that point. And thinking back in terms of the other broader Disney songs I mentioned, those are still more enjoyable, not only in terms of how I think they are better songs, but also because they weren't as overhyped to such a degree that makes it less enjoyable being played on public radio or at certain events, where you just choose to listen to that because it's much more simpler to digest. But for something in the case of Let It Go, it just represents a power that Disney can have in terms of music or movies that we generally think of, where it can represent and relate to the essence of the human experience with or without magic that exists in our minds, something that tried to break the mold of something new for Disney than what we are used to by its relatively simple nature, where despite our feelings about this, we cannot deny the impact it had around the world, speaking in terms of something so simple that everyone has in the inside of their hearts, where letting that part go is the best way to express yourself in the way that you are, and why it always will remain to be a masterpiece in terms of what it done for the world, where sometimes the more basic you could get, the more universal its appeal truly is. And whether you like it or not, this was just going to be the way it was and will be for the remainder of all time. I'm all done, so goodbye.